The notification chirped, drawing my eyes to my phone. Another motion alert from the living room camera. Probably just Whiskers jumping on the couch again. I swiped to open the app, ready to see my tabby cat's guilty face staring back at me. My heart stopped. That wasn't Whiskers. I blinked hard, certain I was seeing things. But when I looked again, the unfamiliar face was still there, peeking around the corner of my living room wall. A stranger in my house, where Sarah should be. "Hey, Jim, you okay?" My co-worker Dave's voice snapped me back to reality. I was still at work, surrounded by the hum of computers and fluorescent lights of our IT department. I gotta go, I stammered, already grabbing my jacket and keys. "Family emergency." Dave's concerned reply faded as I bolted for the elevator, my mind racing. Sarah had taken a half day to work from home. She should be there, safe in our little suburban ranch house. I tried calling her cell, my fingers trembling as I jabbed at the screen. Straight to voicemail. The 15-minute drive home felt like an eternity. I ran every red light, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I kept trying Sarah's phone, each unanswered ring ratcheting up my panic. As I screeched into our driveway, I noticed with a sickening lurch that Sarah's car was gone. Had she left? Was she safe? Or had someone taken her? I sprinted to the front door, fumbling with my keys. Everything looked normal from the outside. No broken windows, no signs of forced entry. But that face I'd seen, I knew it hadn't been a mistake. The door swung open, and I was hit by a wave of cool air. The AC was cranked, much lower than we usually kept it. Sarah was always cold. She never set it this low. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice echoing in the quiet house. No answer. I moved cautiously through the entryway, my eyes darting to every shadow, every corner. The living room looked undisturbed. Whiskers was curled up on the couch, blinking at me sleepily. If there had been an intruder, wouldn't he be more agitated? Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe it was just a glitch in the camera, a trick of the light. But then I saw it, a coffee mug on the kitchen counter. Sarah's favorite mug, the one I'd given her for our first anniversary. Steam still rose from its surface. My blood ran cold. Someone had been here. Recently, I grabbed a knife from the block on the counter, its weight providing little comfort as I crept through the house. Each creak of the floorboards made me flinch. I checked every room, every closet, my heart pounding so loud I was sure anyone hiding could hear it. Nothing. No sign of Sarah, no sign of an intruder. Just our normal, everyday belongings staring back at me accusingly. How could everything look so ordinary when my world had just been turned upside down? I slumped against the wall, running a shaky hand through my hair. What now? Call the police? But what would I tell them? That I saw a stranger on my home security camera, but now there's no one here? That my wife is missing, but her car is gone too? They'd think I was crazy. My phone buzzed, nearly causing me to drop the knife. A text from Sarah. "Hey, babe. Forgot to tell you. Mom wasn't feeling well, so I drove down to check on her. Didn't mean to worry you. Love you." Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by embarrassment. Of course, there was a logical explanation. I'd panicked over nothing. I texted back, not mentioning my mad dash home or the fact that I was standing in our hallway clutching a kitchen knife like some deranged house husband. I wandered back to the kitchen, sheepishly returning the knife to its block. The coffee mug caught my eye again. If Sarah had left suddenly to help her mom, why would she have made coffee? And why was it still hot? A floorboard creaked behind me. I whirled around, my heart leaping into my throat. There, in the shadowy hallway leading to our bedroom, stood a man. The same face I'd seen on the camera. He was younger than me, maybe mid-20s, with close-cropped dark hair and eyes that reminded me of a cornered animal. Wide, alert, dangerous. For a moment, we just stared at each other, both of us seemingly too shocked to move. Then his eyes flicked to the knife block. I lunged for it, my fingers closing around the handle of the chef's knife. But he was faster, closing the distance between us in 2 long strides. His hand clamped down on my wrist, squeezing so hard I cried out in pain, the knife clattering to the floor. "Where is she?" he growled, his face inches from mine. His breath smelled of cigarettes and desperation. "What? Who?" I gasped, struggling against his grip. "Sarah," he shouted, shaking me. "Where's Sarah?" Hearing this stranger say my wife's name sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I brought my knee up hard, catching him in the stomach. He grunted, his grip loosening just enough for me to wrench free. I scrambled backwards, putting the kitchen island between us. He recovered quickly, his eyes darting around the kitchen, looking for a weapon. I had to keep him talking. "I don't know where Sarah is," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She texted me, said she went to her mom's." "Who are you? How do you know her?" He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Her mom's? Is that what she told you?" He shook his head. "Man, she's got you wrapped around her finger, doesn't she?" Confusion and fear warred inside me. "What are you talking about? Who are you?" "I'm the guy she's been seeing for the past 6 months," he spat. "The guy she was supposed to leave you for today." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs, my vision swimming. It couldn't be true. Sarah and I had been happy. We were talking about starting a family. She couldn't. The stranger, Sarah's lover, took advantage of my shock. He vaulted over the island, tackling me to the ground. We grappled on the cold tile floor, each trying to gain the upper hand. He was stronger, but I was fighting for my life, for my marriage, for everything I thought I knew. I managed to land a solid punch to his jaw, sending him reeling back. I scrambled to my feet, lunging for the knife that had fallen earlier. My fingers closed around the handle just as he grabbed my ankle, pulling me off balance. I fell hard, the knife skittering away under the refrigerator. He was on top of me in an instant, his hands around my throat. I clawed at his face, trying to gouge his eyes, to do anything to get him off me. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. This was it. I was going to die on my kitchen floor, killed by my wife's secret boyfriend. The absurdity of it almost made me want to laugh. If I could have drawn breath. Suddenly, the pressure on my throat vanished. There was a loud crash, and the man's weight disappeared. I gasped, sucking in big gulps of air, my vision slowly clearing. Sarah stood over us, a broken vase in her hands, pieces of ceramic scattered around the stranger's unconscious form. "Jim! Oh my God, Jim!" She dropped to her knees beside me, her hands fluttering over me frantically. "Are you okay?" "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I pushed myself up, still wheezing, my throat feeling like it was on fire. I looked at my wife, my beautiful, familiar, suddenly strange wife, and saw tears streaming down her face. "Is it true?" I croaked. Sarah's face crumpled. She nodded, a small, miserable movement. The next hour passed in a blur. Police sirens, paramedics checking my throat, officers taking statements. I watched as they led Sarah's lover away in handcuffs, a trickle of blood running down his temple where the vase had struck him. Sarah tried to explain, her words tumbling out between sobs. How she'd met him at a conference, how one thing had led to another, how she'd been too afraid to leave me, too guilty to stay, how she'd planned to end it today, with both of us, and start fresh somewhere new. I listened in numb silence, my world collapsing around me. Every happy memory, every shared dream, every moment I thought we'd had together, all of it felt tainted now, suspect. As the police car pulled away and the paramedics packed up their gear, Sarah and I were left alone in our kitchen. The home we'd made together now felt like a crime scene. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, her voice small and scared. I looked at her. This woman I'd loved for years, this stranger I suddenly didn't know at all. The bruises forming on my neck throbbed, a physical reminder of how close I'd come to losing everything. "I don't know," I said finally, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "But I do know one thing." Sarah looked up, a flicker of hope in her red-rimmed eyes. "I'm changing the locks." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, leaving my old life behind. The future was uncertain, terrifying, but as I stepped into the fading afternoon light, I realized something. I was still breathing. I was still here. And right now, that was enough. The sound of metal scraping against metal jolted me awake. My eyes flew open, heart pounding, as I realized what I was hearing. Someone was trying to unlock my front door. I lay frozen in bed, straining my ears. There it was again, the unmistakable sound of a key sliding into the lock, followed by a soft curse as it failed to turn. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when I'd finally started to feel safe again. I slid out of bed, my bare feet silent on the cold hardwood floor. The digital clock on my nightstand read 2:17 a.m., its red numbers glowing accusingly in the darkness. Who would be trying to get into my apartment at this hour? A chill ran down my spine as a terrifying thought struck me. There was only one person it could be, the one person I'd been dreading, hoping I'd never see again. Mark, my ex-boyfriend, the man I'd finally gathered the courage to leave 3 months ago, after years of manipulation and emotional abuse. The man who'd promised he'd never let me go. I crept towards my bedroom door, ears straining for any sound. The rattling at the front door had stopped. Had he given up? Or was he trying another way in? My hand hovered over my phone. I should call the police. That's what any rational person would do. But a voice in the back of my mind, one that sounded suspiciously like Mark's, whispered that I was overreacting, that I looked foolish when the cops showed up and found nothing. Another scrape of metal, louder this time. My decision was made for me. I snatched up the phone, fingers trembling as I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's calm voice was a lifeline in the darkness. Someone's trying to break into my apartment, I whispered, afraid that somehow Mark would hear me through the walls. I think it's my ex-boyfriend. He's using a key, but it's not working. Are you in a safe place? The dispatcher asked. I could hear the clack of computer keys in the background. I'm in my bedroom, I replied, edging away from the door. The front door is locked, but I think he's still out there. Okay, I'm dispatching officers to your location now. Can you stay on the line with me? I nodded, then realized she couldn't see me. Yes, I managed to croak out. What's your name, ma'am? Alexis. Alexis Chun. Okay, Alexis, you're doing great. Can you tell me a little more about the situation? Why do you think it's your ex-boyfriend? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. We broke up 3 months ago. I changed the locks, but he's been persistent, calling, texting, showing up at my work. I have a restraining order, but I trailed off as a new sound reached my ears, the soft click of a lock disengaging. My blood ran cold. He's in. I breathed into the phone. Oh, God. He got the door open. The dispatcher's voice took on a new urgency. Alexis, I need you to find a place to hide. Is there a closet or bathroom you can lock yourself in? I looked around my bedroom wildly. The closet was too obvious. The en-suite bathroom didn't have a lock. My eyes fell on the window. I have a fire escape, I whispered. 2nd floor. That's good, Alexis. If you feel safe doing so, you can try to exit that way. But only if you're sure he hasn't made it to your bedroom yet. I crept towards the window, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure Mark would hear it. The floorboards in the living room creaked. He was inside. Alexis? His voice, deceptively soft, drifted through the apartment. Baby, are you home? I just want to talk. Bile rose in my throat. How many times had I heard that before? How many talks had ended with bruises I had to cover up, or nights spent crying myself to sleep? Never again, I muttered. more to myself than the dispatcher still on the line. I eased the window open, wincing at every small sound. The fire escape was old and rusted, and I prayed it wouldn't squeal under my weight. As I swung one leg over the sill, I heard Mark's footsteps growing closer. "Come on, Lex. I know you're here. Your car's outside." I scrambled onto the fire escape, the cold metal biting into my bare feet. The night air was chilly against my skin, raising goosebumps along my arms. I was suddenly very aware that I was outside in nothing but a tank top and sleep shorts. "Officers are 2 minutes out." The dispatcher's voice came through the phone, startling me. I'd almost forgotten she was there. "Are you safe?" "I'm on the fire escape," I whispered back. "I can see the street from here." I peered down at the quiet residential street below. No sign of any police cars yet, but no sign of Mark's car either, which was strange. How had he gotten here? The sound of my bedroom door opening made me flinch. I pressed myself against the brick wall of the building, hoping the shadows would hide me. "Alexis?" Mark's voice was closer now, tinged with annoyance. "Stop playing games. I drove all this way to see you. The least you could do is talk to me." I held my breath as a shadow passed by the window. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought he would look out and see me. But he moved on, his footsteps receding as he checked the bathroom. A flash of white caught my eye from the street below. Headlights. My heart leapt as I saw a police cruiser turning onto my street, its lights off to avoid alerting Mark. "The police are here." I breathed into the phone. "Okay, Alexis, stay where you are. Let the officers handle this." I watched as 2 officers exited the cruiser, approaching my building quietly. I wanted to call out to them, to wave and let them know where I was, but I was afraid of alerting Mark. A crash from inside my apartment made me jump. It sounded like something had been thrown or knocked over. "God damn it, Alexis." Mark's voice was no longer soft. The rage I knew so well was bubbling to the surface. "Where the fuck are you? You think you can just leave me? After everything I've done for you." Tears pricked at my eyes. Even now, after everything, a part of me wanted to go to him, to apologize, to smooth things over. It was what I'd done for years, tamping down my own feelings to manage his volatile emotions. But not this time. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I was done being a victim. "I'm out here, Mark," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. "On the fire escape, and the police are already here." I heard him swear, followed by the sound of running footsteps. A moment later, his face appeared at the window, contorted with anger and disbelief. "You called the fucking cops on me," he snarled, gripping the windowsill so hard his knuckles turned white. "After everything we've been through?" I met his gaze, refusing to flinch away. "It's over, Mark. It's been over. You need to leave." "Bullshit," he spat. "You're mine, Alexis. You've always been mine. You think some piece of paper is going to keep us apart." He started to climb out onto the fire escape. I backed up, my hands gripping the railing behind me. Below, I could hear the police officers entering the building. "Last chance," I said, surprised by the steel in my voice. "Go now, before they get up here." For a moment, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in Mark's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that terrifying, single-minded determination I knew so well. "I'm not leaving without you," he growled, advancing towards me. Time seemed to slow down. I saw Mark's hand reaching for me. I heard the pounding of footsteps on the stairs inside, and I made a decision. I vaulted over the railing of the fire escape. For a heart-stopping moment, I was in free fall. Then my feet hit the awning of the first-floor apartment below. I rolled, the rough fabric scraping my skin, but breaking my fall. "Alexis!" Mark's enraged roar echoed from above. I didn't look back. I tumbled off the awning onto the sidewalk, my legs nearly buckling beneath me. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I sprinted towards a police cruiser, its lights now flashing. "Help!" I shouted. "He's up there!" One of the officers rushed to meet me, while his partner radioed for backup. As they bundled me into the cruiser, I finally allowed myself to look back. Mark was still on the fire escape, his face a mask of fury as he watched his chance at controlling me slip away. Our eyes met one last time. In that moment, I saw the realization dawn in his eyes. He had lost, and I was finally, truly free. As the cruiser pulled away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The night air on my face felt like a caress, full of possibility. For the first time in years, I took a deep breath and smiled. I was safe, I was strong, and my life was my own again. "Mommy, who's the man in my closet?" My daughter's innocent question sent a chill down my spine. I froze, my hand still on the light switch, as I exchanged a panicked glance with my husband, Mark. "What man, sweetie?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm as I approached Lily's bed. "There's no one in your closet. Daddy and I checked. Remember?" Lily's big blue eyes stared up at me, confusion clouding her cherubic face. But I saw him. He told me not to tell, but I don't like keeping secrets. My heart raced as I sat on the edge of her bed, brushing a strand of blonde hair from her forehead. "When did you see this man, Lily?" "Just now," she whispered, her lower lip trembling. "When you turned off the light." He opened the door a little and waved at me. I felt Mark's hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently. I knew without looking that his other hand was inching towards a baseball bat we kept in the hallway for this very reason. "It's okay, Princess," Mark said, his voice steady despite the tension I could feel radiating from him. "Daddy's gonna check the closet again, okay? Just to make sure there are no monsters or men hiding in there." Lily nodded, clutching her stuffed rabbit tighter to her chest. I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close as Mark approached the closet. My eyes darted around the room, looking for anything out of place, any sign that someone had been here. The room looked normal. Lily's drawings covered one wall, a rainbow of crayon scribbles and glitter. Her toy chest sat in the corner, closed but overflowing with dolls and games. The window was locked, the curtains drawn against the night. Everything was as it should be, except for the closet. Mark reached for the handle, and I held my breath. In that moment, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Had I locked all the doors? Set the alarm? How could someone have gotten in without us noticing? And if there really was someone in there, what would we do? The closet door creaked open. I tensed, ready to grab Lily and run. But as the door swung wide, revealing the jumble of clothes and toys inside, there was no one there. Mark pushed aside hanging dresses and checked the corners, but the closet was empty. He turned back to us, shaking his head. "See, sweetie, no one here. It must have been a bad dream." Lily frowned, her brow furrowing. But I wasn't asleep yet. I saw him. I forced a smile, trying to hide my unease. "Sometimes our eyes play tricks on us in the dark, Lily. That's why it's important to always turn on the light if you're scared." She didn't look convinced, but nodded anyway. "Can you leave the night light on?" "Of course, baby," I said, kissing her forehead. "Try to get some sleep now, okay?" As we tucked her in again, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Lily had always had an active imagination, but this felt different. The certainty in her voice, the specificity of her description. It unsettled me. Mark and I left her room, leaving the door cracked open as always. As soon as we were out of earshot, he turned to me. "You don't think," he started, his voice low. I shook my head. "It's not possible. We would have noticed if someone broke in." But even as I said it, doubt crept in. We'd been distracted lately, both working long hours and trying to balance our careers with parenting. Could we have missed something? "I'm going to check the house," Mark said, grabbing the baseball bat from its spot by the stairs. "Just to be sure." I nodded, following him downstairs. We moved through each room methodically, checking windows and doors, peering into every potential hiding spot. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the living room. Everything seemed normal. No signs of forced entry, nothing out of place. By the time we finished our sweep, I had almost convinced myself that Lily really had just had a vivid imagination. Almost. As we climbed back up the stairs, a floorboard creaked under my foot. I paused, a memory stirring. Hadn't I heard that same creak earlier when we were putting Lily to bed? I had dismissed it then, but now... "Mark," I whispered, grabbing his arm. "I think I heard something earlier. When we were in Lily's room." He frowned, turning back to me. "What do you mean?" "A creak, like someone walking." I thought it was just a house settling, but I didn't need to finish the thought. Mark's expression hardened, and he gripped the bat tighter. Without a word, we both turned and headed back to Lily's room. The hallway seemed longer than usual, shadows stretching ominously in the dim light. My heart pounded in my chest as we approached Lily's door, still cracked open as we'd left it. Mark pushed it open slowly, wincing at the slight squeak of the hinges. Lily was asleep, her chest rising and falling steadily, one arm thrown over her stuffed rabbit. Everything looked exactly as we'd left it. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Then I saw it, a slight movement, barely perceptible, from the closet. The door, which we'd left wide open, was now closed to just a crack. I grabbed Mark's arm, pointing silently. He nodded, understanding immediately. With agonizing slowness, he crept towards the closet, bat raised. I moved to Lily's bed, ready to grab her and run if needed. My heart was racing so fast, I was sure it would wake her. Mark reached for the closet door, his hand trembling slightly. Our eyes met for a moment, and I saw my own fear reflected in his gaze. He mouthed a silent countdown. 3, 2, 1. The closet door flew open. A blur of motion erupted from within. I screamed, unable to help myself, as a figure lunged at Mark. The bat clattered to the floor as they grappled, crashing into Lily's dresser. Lily woke with a start, her scream joining mine as she saw the struggle unfolding in her room. "Run!" Mark shouted, as he fought to keep the intruder's hands away from his throat. "Take Lily and run." I scooped Lily into my arms, her small body shaking with sobs, and bolted for the door. Behind me, I heard the sickening sound of flesh hitting flesh, grunts of exertion and pain. We stumbled down the stairs, Lily clinging to me like a lifeline. My mind raced. Phone, keys, car. We needed to get out, to call for help. I fumbled with the lock on the front door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. Finally, it clicked open, and we spilled out into the cool night air. The street was quiet, peaceful. No one stirred in the neighboring houses, unaware of the nightmare unfolding just a few feet away. I ran to our car, frantically pressing the key fob to unlock it. As I wrenched open the back door to put Lily inside, a crash from upstairs made me whirl around. Our bedroom window exploded outward in a shower of glass. 2 figures tumbled out, locked in a desperate struggle. They hit the awning over the porch, rolling off onto the lawn in a tangle of limbs. "Daddy!" Lily screamed, as we watched Mark grappling with the intruder on the grass. I grabbed my phone from the car, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. "Please!" I gasped as soon as the operator answered. "Someone broke into our house. My husband is fighting him. Please hurry." As I rattled off our address, I watched the fight on the lawn with growing horror. Mark was strong, but the intruder was wiry and desperate. They rolled across the grass, trading blows, neither able to gain the upper hand. Suddenly, the intruder broke free. He scrambled to his feet, casting one last wild look at us before sprinting away down the street. Mark staggered up, his face bloody but his eyes blazing with protective fury. "Are you okay?" he called, stumbling towards us. "Did he hurt you?" I shook my head, tears streaming down my face as I pulled him into a fierce embrace. Lily wormed her way between us, her small arms wrapping around our legs. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. Lights were coming on in neighboring houses, curious faces appearing in windows. As the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a bone-deep weariness, I looked down at Lily. Her face was tear-stained but resolute. "I told you there was a man in my closet," she said quietly. I hugged her tighter, marveling at her bravery. "You did, sweetheart. You did. And you were so brave to tell us." As police cars screeched to a halt in front of our house, I realized that our lives had changed forever. Our sense of safety, the sanctity of our home, had been shattered. But we were alive. We were together. And as I held my family close, listening to the approaching footsteps of the police, I made a silent vow. We would get through this. We would make our home safe again. And I would always believe my daughter. Because sometimes the monsters in the closet are real. The first sign that something was wrong was the footsteps above my head. Soft, careful, but unmistakable. I froze, spoonful of cereal halfway in my mouth, and listened. There it was again, the quiet shuffle of feet moving across my attic floor. I lived alone, or at least I was supposed to. Setting my spoon down with a soft clink, I rose from the kitchen table. The house creaked around me, suddenly sinister in its familiarity. I'd bought this old Victorian 6 months ago, charmed by its ornate woodwork and spacious rooms. Now, standing in my sunny kitchen on a Tuesday morning, I felt like a stranger in my own home. The footsteps had stopped, but the silence that followed was almost worse. It felt expectant, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I should call the police. That would be the sensible thing to do. But curiosity mingled with my fear, edged with a strange sort of anger. This was my house. How dare someone intrude on my space, my sanctuary? Before I could talk myself out of it, I was moving towards a narrow door that led to the attic stairs. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. What if they were armed? What if there was more than one person up there? But I couldn't just stand here, paralyzed by indecision. Taking a deep breath, I eased the door open. The stairs stretched up before me, disappearing into shadows. Dust motes danced in the beam of light from the doorway. I strained my ears, listening for any sound from above, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. Slowly, carefully, I began to climb. Each step creaked under my weight, announcing my approach to whoever or whatever was waiting at the top. My palms were sweaty, and I gripped the railing tighter. As I neared the top of the stairs, a musty smell hit me. It was the usual attic scent of dust and old wood. But there was something else. Something human. Sweat, maybe, or unwashed clothes. I paused on the last step, suddenly unsure. The attic stretched out before me, a maze of shadows and piled boxes. Weak sunlight filtered through the single round window, casting strange patterns on the floor. And there, in the far corner, was a nest. There was no other word for it. Blankets and pillows had been piled into a makeshift bed. Empty food wrappers and water bottles were scattered around it. A duffel bag slumped against the wall, spilling clothes onto the floor. Someone had been living in my attic. The realization hit me like a physical blow. How long had they been up here? How had I not noticed? I thought back to the past few months, trying to remember if I'd heard anything strange, seen anything out of place. But nothing came to mind. I'd been so busy with work, so focused on settling into my new home, that I'd missed the signs of an intruder right above my head. A floorboard creaked behind me. I whirled around, my heart leaping into my throat. There, emerging from behind a stack of boxes, was a man. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe in his early 20s. His clothes were dirty and wrinkled, his hair greasy and unkempt, but it was his eyes that caught my attention. They were wide and frightened, like a cornered animal. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. What do you say to someone who's been secretly living in your home? "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice hoarse. I didn't mean for this to happen. I found my voice at last. Who are you? How long have you been up here? He shifted nervously, his eyes darting to the stairs behind me. My name's Alex. I've been here about 2 months, I think. 2 months. The words echoed in my head. This stranger had been living above me for 2 months, and I'd had no idea. Why? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Why here? Alex's shoulders slumped. I lost my job, then my apartment. I was on the street for a while, but it was getting cold. I saw this house, saw the attic window. I thought just for a night or two, but then a night turned into a week, and a week turned into... He trailed off, gesturing helplessly at the nest of blankets. I should have been angry. I should have been terrified. But looking at Alex, at the desperation etched into every line of his face, I felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. Have you been here the whole time? I asked. Even during the day? He shook his head. I'd leave early in the morning, before you woke up, walk around town, try to find work. I'd come back late at night, after you were asleep. My mind reeled, trying to process this information. How many times had I been in the house, oblivious to the person hiding just above me? I never took anything, Alex said quickly, as if reading my thoughts. I swear, just a little food sometimes, when I couldn't find any other way. I always planned to pay you back. Somehow, I ran a hand through my hair, trying to think. The responsible thing would be to call the police. This was breaking and entering, trespassing at the very least. But looking at Alex, I couldn't bring myself to reach for my phone. What would you have done if I hadn't found you? I asked instead. He shrugged, a small, defeated gesture. Kept looking for work, I guess. Tried to save up enough to get back on my feet. And then, I don't know. Left, I suppose. Found somewhere else. The quiver in his voice, the hopelessness in his eyes, made my decision for me. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to come downstairs and take a shower. I'll find you some clean clothes. And then we're going to sit down and figure out how to get you back on your feet. For real this time. Alex's eyes widened in disbelief. You're not calling the cops? I shook my head. Not if you don't give me a reason to. But this can't continue, Alex. You can't live in my attic. I know, he said quickly. I know. Thank you. I don't know what to say. You can start by coming downstairs, I said, gesturing to the stairs. And maybe telling me a bit more about yourself. Like, for starters, how you managed to sneak in and out of my house for 2 months without me noticing. As we made our way down the stairs, Alex behind me, I tried to process the surreal turn my morning had taken. I'd woken up alone, as usual, only to discover I'd had an unexpected roommate all along. In the harsh light of the downstairs hallway, Alex looked even more bedraggled. His clothes hung loosely on his thin frame, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. But there was a glimmer of something in his gaze now. Hope, maybe. Or at least relief. I showed him to the bathroom, found him a clean towel and some of my ex-boyfriend's old clothes that I'd never gotten around to donating. As the sound of running water filled the house, I sat at my kitchen table, my forgotten cereal now a soggy mess. What was I doing? Letting a stranger who'd been squatting in my attic use my shower, offering to help him? It was crazy, dangerous even. But something about Alex's story, about the desperation that had driven him to such extremes, had struck a chord. I thought about how easily it could have been me in his position. One stroke of bad luck, one missed paycheck, and any of us could end up with nowhere to go. The water shut off, and a few minutes later, Alex appeared in the kitchen doorway, clean-shaven and dressed in fresh clothes. He looked like a different person, younger, less haunted. I don't know how to thank you, he said, hovering uncertainly in the doorway. I gestured to the chair across from me. You can start by sitting down and telling me your story. The whole story this time. As Alex sank into the chair, I saw a flicker of that cornered animal look again. But he took a deep breath and began to talk. I listened as he told me about losing his job, about the spiral of depression that had followed, about sleeping on friends' couches until he'd worn out his welcome, and then on park benches when he had nowhere else to go, about seeing my attic window one cold night and making a desperate decision. As he talked, I found myself making mental notes, places to look for job openings, local charities that might be able to help, skills he had that could be marketable. By the time he finished his story, the sun had risen fully, bathing the kitchen in warm light. It felt like a new day in more ways than one. "Okay," I said, standing up, "let's get to work. We've got a lot to do if we're going to get you back on your feet." Alex looked up at me, a mix of gratitude and disbelief on his face. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." I thought about it for a moment. "Because everyone deserves a second chance," I finally said. "And because next time, it could be me who needs help. Now come on. We've got some job applications to fill out." As we settled in to start Alex's job search, I couldn't help but glance up at the ceiling. My attic, once just a storage space, now held a strange new significance. It was a reminder of how quickly life could change and of the hidden struggles people around us might be facing. I didn't know what the future held for Alex, or how this unusual situation would play out. But I did know one thing. I'd never take the quiet of my home for granted again. The moment I saw the back door slightly ajar, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. My heart leapt into my throat as I stood frozen on our back porch, the cool night air suddenly feeling much colder against my skin. I shouldn't have gone out. I shouldn't have broken curfew. And now, someone was in my house. My name is Jess, and I'm 16 years old. Up until about 30 seconds ago, my biggest worry was whether my parents would catch me sneaking back in after hanging out with my friends past curfew. Now, as I stared at that barely opened door, a whole new world of fears crashed over me. I should call the police. I should run to a neighbor's house. I should do anything except what I was about to do. But my little brother, Tommy, was asleep upstairs, and my parents, thinking I was safely in bed, had gone out for their monthly date night. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open wider, wincing at the slight creak of the hinges. The kitchen was dark, illuminated only by the soft glow of the nightlight we always left on for Tommy. Everything looked normal at first glance. Dishes still in the drying rack, fruit bowl on the counter, my mom's favorite mug left out from her morning coffee. Then I saw them, muddy footprints leading from the door to the stairs. My blood ran cold. Whoever had broken in was upstairs, where Tommy was sleeping. I should leave. I should get help. But the thought of my 8-year-old brother, alone and vulnerable, spurred me into action. Grabbing the heaviest frying pan from the rack, I crept towards the stairs, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the intruder would hear it. The wooden steps creaked under my weight, each sound seeming to echo through the silent house. I paused at every noise, straining my ears for any sign of movement above. But the upper floor remained quiet. As I reached the top of the stairs, I saw more muddy footprints leading down the hallway. They passed my bedroom, my parents' room, and stopped at Tommy's door. Fear clawed at my throat, threatening to burst out in a scream. I swallowed it down, gripping the frying pan tighter as I inched towards my brother's room. The door was closed, but a faint sliver of light spilled out from underneath. Tommy's nightlight. With trembling fingers, I reached for the doorknob. Taking one last deep breath, I flung the door open, frying pan raised high. The room was empty. Tommy was still fast asleep in his bed, his tousled brown hair peeking out from under the covers. His collection of stuffed animals stood guard around him, silent sentinels in the soft glow of his rocket ship nightlight. Relief washed over me, so strong it made my knees weak. But it was short-lived. If the intruder wasn't here, where were they? A floorboard creaked behind me. I whirled around. the frying pan slipping from my suddenly numb fingers. There, blocking the doorway, stood a man, tall, with a dark hoodie pulled low over his face. In the dim light, I could just make out the glint of something metallic in his hand. Time seemed to slow down. I saw his eyes widen in surprise. He clearly hadn't expected anyone to be home. I saw his grip tighten on what I now realized was a knife. I saw Tommy stir in his bed, disturbed by the noise. And then, operating on pure instinct, I acted. I lunged forward, using my whole body weight to slam into the intruder. He stumbled backward, caught off guard by my sudden attack. We tumbled into the hallway, grappling in the darkness. He was stronger than me, but I had the advantage of surprise and desperation. I clawed at his face, kicked at his shins, did everything I could to keep him away from Tommy's room. Jess, my brother's sleepy voice called out from his bedroom. "What's going on?" "Tommy, stay in your room," I shouted, ducking as the intruder swung his knife at me. "Call 911. The man redoubled his efforts, trying to push past me towards Tommy's room. I planted my feet, using the narrow hallway to my advantage. He couldn't get around me without going through me. "Let me go, you stupid bitch," he snarled, his breath hot on my face as we struggled. "I'll cut you. I swear I will." I felt the cold kiss of the knife against my arm, felt a sharp sting as it bit into my skin, but the pain only fueled my determination. I brought my knee up hard, catching him in the stomach. He doubled over with a grunt, and I used the moment to shove him backwards with all my strength. He stumbled, his feet tangling in the hallway rug. With a cry of surprise, he fell backwards down the stairs. I heard a series of thuds, a crash, and then silence. For a moment, I just stood there, panting. My arm throbbed where he'd cut me, and I could feel bruises forming where he'd grabbed me. But I was alive, and more importantly, Tommy was safe. "Jess," Tommy's voice quavered from his doorway. "Are you okay?" "I called 911 like you said." I turned to him, forcing a smile onto my face. "I'm okay, buddy. You did great. The police will be here soon. Let's go downstairs and wait for them, okay?" Tommy nodded, his eyes wide as he took in my disheveled appearance and the blood on my arm. I took his hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze as we made our way downstairs. The intruder was sprawled at the bottom of the stairs, unmoving. I steered Tommy away from him into the living room. As we waited for the police, I held my little brother close, my mind reeling from what had just happened. The next few hours passed in a blur. Police sirens, paramedics checking my arm, officers taking statements. My parents rushed home, faces pale with worry. There were tears and hugs and stern words about breaking curfew mixed with profound relief that we were both okay. As the night finally began to wind down, I found myself sitting on our front porch, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. A police officer, Jenkins, according to his name tag, sat down next to me. "You did good tonight, kid," he said, his voice gruff but kind. "Not many adults would have had the courage to do what you did." I shrugged, wincing as a movement pulled at the bandage on my arm. I didn't feel brave. I was terrified. Officer Jenkins nodded. "That's what real bravery is. Being scared but doing the right thing anyway." He paused, then added, "We found some interesting things in the guy's car. Looks like he's been breaking into houses all over the county. You might have stopped more than just one burglary tonight." The weight of what could have happened settled over me. If I hadn't broken curfew, if I hadn't come home when I did, I shuddered, pulling the blanket tighter. "I got lucky," I murmured. "Maybe," Jenkins agreed, "but you also kept your head in a crisis. That's not luck, that's skill. Have you ever thought about a career in law enforcement?" I laughed, surprised by the question. "Not really. I was thinking about becoming a teacher." Actually, Jenkins smiled. "Well, if you ever change your mind, give me a call. We could use people like you on the force." As he walked away, I leaned back, looking up at the stars. The night that had started with a teenage act of rebellion had turned into something I knew would change me forever. I thought about Tommy, safely asleep inside, and about all the other families who might sleep easier tonight because of what had happened. Maybe Officer Jenkins was right. Maybe there was more to me than I had realized. I didn't know what the future held, but I did know one thing. I'd never take my family's safety for granted again. And maybe, just maybe, I'd found a new path for my life. As I stood up to go inside, I took one last look at the quiet street. The world felt different now, bigger and scarier, but also full of possibilities. I had faced my worst fear tonight and come out the other side. Whatever came next, I knew I could handle it. With a small smile, I turned and went inside, closing the door firmly behind me. This time, I made sure it was locked.